Okay, so this is my presentation on research techniques in the creative media industries. So, here are some of the ways we've been collecting research data. Okay, so primary research, this is new data that hasn't been collected before, and it's used to understand certain questions and issues, and it can also be known as field research because obviously you're going out yourself to find the data. Possible primary sources include interviews, so these are quite useful in maintaining in-depth descriptions of experiences. Questionnaires and surveys, so these are good for obtaining views of a large group of respondents, so 100,000 or so. Focus groups, these are good for gathering reactions, attitudes, feelings and beliefs on the spot because you're obviously talking to them. The types of questions you can use is open, so throwing it out to the respondent, they're free to respond how they wish, or closed questions, so these yes, no, on a scale of 1 to 10, etc, etc. And another useful form of primary research is internet forums, because they're easy recruitment and be unobtrusive, because if people don't want to talk, they don't have to. Another form of data is secondary research. This involves making use of previously researched publicly available data as opposed to primary when you're going out and finding your own. So this means it can also be known as desk research because using other people's data, so it's obviously less work than primary research. And a number of possible secondary sources include books, so it's statistics, data, etc. Journals, so it's papers that respective people have actually written. Magazines, so it's articles, pieces. DVDs, so documentaries, internet sites that helps you get good background information. There's obviously newspapers, which is obviously a more formal version of magazines. You got articles, pieces, and statistics again. Then obviously you have ratings Likert scale, so scale of 1 to 10, etc. There are several data gathering agencies that have proved useful throughout this project, and this includes the BRB, so that stands for the Broadcasters Audience Research Board, and these help obtain audience measurements and TV ratings to judge whether a program's actually popular or not. There's Experian, these are a data services company, and they focus on 3 key areas: identity, so actually knowing the customer and their needs; intelligence, the best ways to actually reach the customer; and interaction, so the best way to communicate with the customer, say social media, TV advertising, etc. Mosaic, this is the system actually used by Experian to classify UK households and their inhabitants, and for advertising via direct mail, telemarketing, email, mobile, online and TV. And the final guarantee agency is YouGov, and these international internet-based, but based in the UK. And they specialise in conducting online market research, polls, surveys, etc. So now actually on to talking about the show itself. So one of the ways we've been collecting data on people just do nothing is via quantitative research, and this is the statistical, mathematical, numerical analysis of data, which is collected through polls, questionnaires or surveys. So some of the things we've been doing, we've been collecting programme ratings, so obviously these are self-explanatory, so it's audience opinion on a TV radio show. If it's high, the BBC should be more likely to contemplate actually funding the movie based on the show, or a Corrupt FM garage Grime album. And they're very high for people just doing nothing, and the viewing figures for the show back in Series 2 actually show it did very well on air, with about 1.4 million views on average. And even though it's moved online now, with BBC 3 moving online, the show still actually aired a week later on BBC 2, just to how successful it was. We've also used Barb and Rojar figures, and these, as I said before, these measure TV and radio audiences respectively, so it allows the companies to track their viewing figures. both for the obviously the TV show and any like Grime tracks, etc. that were released by Corrupt.fm. And when the show actually first aired on iPlayer, the show became the most shared show for a month. This is back in August 2012, and the pilot actually beat EastEnders that week in viewing figures. So, that's obviously quite good proof that the show is worth investing in, both as a film and or musically in terms of an album. And we've also been looking at the BBC Free website, and as you all know, it's obviously moved from being a TV channel to an online-only distribution services recently. And obviously this is where People Just Do Nothing is distributed from. In tracking the website hits, obviously these are very high as well. And obviously it's good proof to whether people actually come on, watch the new episodes, or go back and watch the older episodes as well. And the actual concept of website hits works well for SoundCloud and Spotify as well, especially with Spotify, because you can track the number of listens and popularity. We've also been using qualitative research, and this is used to gain an understanding of reasoning, opinions and motivation, and it helps to provide an insight into something or aids in the development of ideas or hypotheses. So firstly we have reviews, so these are viewer critic opinions on TV and radio shows, and we put a link here and it highlights very positive reviews for People Just Do Nothing. All reviews are sent in with all unanimously positive, so either 9 or 10 out of 10. And you can actually see on the bottom of this slide, Corrupt.fm's newest single, Heart Monitor Rhythms, also receiving very positive reviews on iTunes and high numbers of streams on Spotify as well. And as you'll be able to see on the next slide, newspapers also given favourable reviews to the show as well. We've been using websites, so obviously other than BBC advertising, there's other websites promoting the show. So you have Corrupt.fm with their Spotify and iTunes pages and the SoundCloud profile, and the link to the SoundCloud profiles on the side, and that allows access to the music. We've got examples of those in later slides. We have advertising campaigns to BBC Free, because obviously it's made its move online now. So we have a cross-channel advertising campaign that was launched to raise awareness that, hey, content's available online now. And part of this campaign brought focus to People Just Do Nothing itself, so that increases iPlayer views further. Sadly, we can't actually get viewing figures for iPlayer unless BBC releases them, to an extent that the BBC actually commissioned both a third and fourth series before BBC actually even moved online. In addition to this as well, Corrupt.fm have made frequent appearances on radio shows like BBC One Extra, and that's attracted viewers to both the shows and its characters, so like MC Grinder, for example. And finally, we have focus groups, so these like BBC Free demographics, and the BBC, especially like BBC Music, which is where obviously the album will be released, often hold focus groups of viewers to get their opinions on different shows, and it's very obvious that it continued renewal of the show and spin-off material, so CDs, gigs, etc. And the success of these can be partly attributed to high levels of viewer satisfaction with the show, and this obviously would have been attained via the focus groups. So as you can see here, some of the reviews from IMDb of the show. And here are some more reviews. And here are some newspaper reviews for People Just Do Nothing. Here's a view of their SoundCloud page. As you can see, some of the tracks are present. We've also been collecting audience research, and this is comprised of several different things. So first we have audience data, and this concerns viewing figures as to how many people watched a certain program. And this data serves two purposes. One, it provides demographics, so in terms of age, gender, etc., as well as proof that the show actually has high enough ratings to warrant the funding of a film. There's audience profiling, so this concerns viewing personalities, like what type of program does a certain viewer like. And this will be used to ensure the target audience consistently ranks People Just Do Nothing as good as amongst other similar shows. We have demographics. So this is what I was just talking about with audience data. So how is the target audience actually divided up? So gender, age, etc. And this actually helps tailor the content of the film, i.e. like the jokes, and ensures the best methods of advertising are used. So if, for example, the age demographic is younger, we might want to use social media instead of TV or radio advertising. And with Grime music, we've found the main target audience is actually, as we've just said, 16 to 30-year-old like lower class straight males. Depend either ethnicity, doesn't really matter. We have geo demographics. This relates to how the target audience is divided up by country. So you could use this to find out which countries People Just Do Nothing is actually most popular in. So that's gives us the main target markets of the film and the album. We have consumer behaviour. So this concerns the study of consumer habits, so buying, viewing habits, etc. And this is most useful in determining the best marketing strategies, like what time to air an advert or where to put them, and the use of social marketing. We have consumer attitudes. This is the feelings of the consumers towards a certain product, so do they like it or not. And this is actually useful in getting public opinion on People Just Do Nothing and the spin-off content to judge whether a film or an album is actually commercially viable. We have audience awareness. This is actually the extent to a company knowing their target audience. That's just a better way to tailor content and methods of delivery. So this allows things such as better scheduling, so perhaps a prime time slot, and more tailored distribution. So album, you want to stream it on Spotify or something, for example, and actually, it's useful in terms of advertisement as well. And as radio and TV companies can actually accurately determine their audience, this research is really necessary to actually get the audience size and demographic, and it helps obviously discover the audience preferences too. Here are some examples of some YouGov statistics on People Just Do Nothing viewers. So the typical age, their gender, which way they lean in terms of politics, some of their favourite music artists and celebrities, car brands, general interests, etc. So here we're going to talk about market research. So what is it? So we can break it down into several different categories. So first of all, we have product marketing. So this is how or where products are actually offered for purchase. And since People Just Do Nothing is already an online show, it could also make sense to sell the film version online via the BBC source, so like Director Online, as this is where actually most of the audience already is. In terms of the album, it also makes sense to use online avenues such as iTunes, Spotify, etc. And you could use viral marketing like Facebook, Twitter, and of course regular print media like billboards, posters, etc. Most other films of this genre have tended to stick to regular teaser trailers and official trailers over, say, fan trailers, really. Marketing's also obviously done by the gigs advertised on Ticketmaster for Corrupt FM, and their next gigs on December the 17th at the time of this at O2 Brixton Academy. It's another example of life imitating art. Gigs are actually second nature for the stars because most of them already spent most of their lives DJing, MCing. We have competition, so these are obviously the rivals that you want to be more profitable and successful in their respectable marketplace. In this case, it'd be relatively easy to convince the BBC to fund a film version of a show to rival ITV and Channel 4, etc. Or in terms of music, Channel 4 is really the biggest rival of the BBC because they own 50% of the Box network, so they control music channels such as Box, Kerrang and 4 Music, and obviously on the film front they have Film 4. We have competitor analysis, and recently several shows have actually made good jumps to the big screen. The BBC, for one, had bad education, but obviously the main success comes from Channel 4 films. They had the two In-Betweeners movies, and these gross over $150 million combined. As People Just Do Nothing is always successful, it's obvious that a film adaptation would also be very profitable. But we've got two links showing the summaries for the profits of the two In-Betweeners movies. In terms of music, a good example of TV show characters making the move to an album format, PJ and Duncan, obviously otherwise known as Ant and Dec, and these went on to lead a successful music career off the back of Biker Red Grove, and their debut album was actually certified platinum. We also have advertising placements. This is a specific group of ad units on which advertisers can place advertisements. And as People Just Do Nothing now exclusively airs online due to the recent BBC Three move online only, it is common sense to assume that advertising for the show also be online based. As well as being on the BBC website, I feel that advertising should also air on the related radio stations like BBC, Radio 1, etc. Most of those that focus on grime. And that would obviously attract fans of the genre into watching the show and buying the music. And finally, we have advertising effects, so what advertising actually does to a consumer and their buying habits. And the BBC really should be aimed to study which type of advertising, online, TV, radio, etc. actually has the biggest impact on viewing habits, and use this data to tweak the marketing campaign to suit. Marketing research is mostly conducted for 4 main reasons. 1, product, so finding the wants and needs of the consumers. Price, so setting price based on consumer demands, profit margins. Placement, what's the best way for the product to be distributed. And promotion, so what's the best way or method to appeal to a particular target audience or demographic. Okay, so as well as providing images for things on the other slides, this slide also shows the worldwide profits of the Bad Education movie, In-Betweeners movie, and Alan Partridge. Recently, we've actually found that alongside film profits, soundtracks actually bring in a good source of revenue for the production companies. And there are 2 really good examples. Firstly is David Brent, Life on the Road. And on Spotify, the soundtrack averages around 300,000 streams across 20 songs since its release earlier this year. And an even bigger example is Alan Partridge's Alpha Papa, because this soundtrack's mostly made up of pop classics. It's obviously got a very high number of streams. So we've got Don't You Want Me, and that has around 50 million streams. So this slide's talking about grime, and this is a genre of music that developed from UK garage music. And both feature 4/4 breakbeats and make use of a variety of synth, string, other electronic instruments, and the tempo is about 130 BPM. In terms of the actual Corrupt FM People Just Do Nothing album, it's important here to compare it to sales figures of other grime artists to judge the viability. And as you can see, very good examples, very good viability. We have Bugsy Malone and his latest EP, Facing Time, reached number 1 in the official UK downloads charts. We have Skepta with his latest album, Konnichiwa, and it's released earlier this year, and it's already gone to reach gold status, and it's sold 100,000 copies in the UK alone. We have Stormzy with his single Shut Up, and it reached number 8 in the UK singles charts last year, actually after a campaign to have it be the Christmas number 1 of 2015. And we have Dizzy Rascal and his album Mass in English, and that reached gold status in 2013 after selling over 100,000 copies. These are some of the chart statistics as I mentioned on the previous slide. So let's talk about production research. What is it? Well, it's broken up into several sections. So let's start with content. So in terms of film version of TV shows, they usually go bigger and better than the TV counterpart. For example, the In-Betweeners films went to Malaysia and Australia. So a good concept for the People Just Do Nothing film might be to follow the Corrupt FM stars throughout a tour in a foreign country. They could meet and interact with other famous grime stars, perhaps even the ones I've mentioned before. I don't know. We have viability. Obviously, because it's already got a large following, it's very likely that the film or album will be profitable. It would certainly be a better choice than funding a new film with unknown characters and a plot that people may not like, or the debut album or EP of an unknown artist with perhaps not that big of a following. At this moment in time, a US version of the show is actually already being considered, so that's good proof that the money is already being invested in the show internationally. I've got a link to that in the Independent. We have placement media, so obviously most films and music release and advertise in many places like YouTube, social media, posters, adverts on TV, etc. People just do nothing to do well following this same plan, especially considering the younger demographic, like internet generation target audience. The show's already got a good online following, so it makes a lot of sense to do a lot of the advertising online to get as much awareness as possible for the film or album. A Facebook page for the show does exist, but it only has a small fan base. You can see that in a few slides' time, and this would actually need to be rectified before a film release, so perhaps you could add some exclusive content such as sneak peeks, trailers, demos of new music, etc. We have finance. So as with most film adaptations, the money to actually film an album or a film will come from either a channel creative of the shows like BBC Music and an outside production company. As an example, the In-Betweeners movie followed this structure. Film 4, so Channel 4 funded the production, but Young Films and Bork, actually, the production company, actually helped fund it too. And music releases, that would be most likely funded by the BBC's in-house label, BBC Music. And finally, we have costs, and this will depend on the scale of the film. So if you want to go as big as the In-Betweeners movie, there's a link there showing this, and it'll cost about £3.5 million. This is the aforementioned People Just Do Nothing / Corrupt FM official Facebook page. Okay, so continuing on with talking about production research, we have digital resources. So I think the film should be shot in the same style as People Just Do Nothing is normally, and use relatively like the same equipment, so cameras, camera angles, etc. And this will help to retain the same attitude and vibe of the TV show. We have personnel. So really the film adaptation should aim to keep the entire cast of the show, but obviously add in like additional celebrity guest stars. So maybe it could feature Craig David, who actually recently appeared on a radio show with Corrupt FM. And in terms of that album, we could also perhaps have some famous grime artists making some guest appearances, so maybe Bugsy Malone, Big Nasty, etc. We have locations, so typically a film adaptation will either stick to the area where the TV show's filmed, or in the case of like the In-Betweeners, for example, we'll film in like a better location, such as abroad. So a good concept, as we've stated previously, might be to film a foreign tour, perhaps around America, for example. We have copyrights. This mostly covers the use of outside works, so such as like music. And since the stars of the show are actually Corrupt FM, it makes sense to actually heavily utilise their music, so this would heavily cut down on like copyright usage. But if we did choose to use some additional music, so we'd need a performance license, such as from PRS for Music or PPL, to actually cover the use of outside music should we choose to use it. And finally, we have regulations. As the show would traditionally air after Watershed because of its explicit content, it makes sense to give the film version an equivalent rating, so say like a 15, for example. If we could cut down content to lower rating to make it more accessible, but it might cause it to be too tame as a result. And obviously, the audience might not be happy about that. In terms of albums, they're not typically affected by these ratings. If you have explicit content, you need a parental advisory sticker. Okay, that's everything from me, so thanks for watching.